This morning we have Shel Israel with us. Shel writes and speaks about the impact in technology in business and life. He has written 6 books, including Age of Context and Naked Conversations, and has written for Forbes and Fast Company. He has been a keynote speaker more than 50 times on continents not covered by ice. So without further ado, here's Shel to talk to us about lethal generosity.
Hi, everybody. I finished writing my book, and it got filed with the publisher last night. So this is the first time I get to talk about it in the past tense, and I'm very happy. And as soon as I find, tech support, help, how do I get live again? Stop the clock, the bottom button. Okay. So if I make a few little never mind. To summarize what the book is about, I'll shorten it from what you're seeing there. The book argues the case that being kind to customers, giving them the best possible experience, is the best way to really screw your competition. Because no matter what they offer, no matter what great promotional opportunity they may offer one time, the customer will be loyal to the brands that give them the best experience. They will trust the brands that give them the best experience. The book starts with 5 old stories. This is, when I say old stories, it means anything that happened before technology. I first got the idea of what would become the title, Lethal Generosity, by my frequent co-author and co-conspirator, Robert Scoble. He told me a story about his first job where he worked in a camera store in San Jose. It was a discount camera store. It bitterly competed with another camera store. And every now and then somebody would come in looking for a camera of the day, something like a Minolta SRT 101, for those of you who remember the good old analog days. And he'd say, you know, the guy around the corner's got that camera on sale right now. And people would look at him and they'd be shocked. And then they'd go around the corner. And it looks like he lost a sale, which he did do. But what he gained was a customer, because they made the deal over there. And then sure enough, most of them would come back and they would buy the camera case, the tripod. They would use that old stuff called film. They would get their development done there. Whatever they bought, they would go back to a Scoble. They would go back, they'd bring friends in. So essentially, he lost a sale, he gained a customer, he gained a relationship that lasted years later. Paul Mabray, who is CEO of a company that just got acquired called Vintank, which is covered in the book, told me as a sidebar about the time when he was in college and he got a flat tire up in Napa where he lives. And he got towed to the nearest place, which happened to be a Les Schwab tire store. You probably haven't heard about them in Boston, but Les Schwab is one of these characters you see on late night TV. But he guarantees if you buy his tires, you'll never pay for a flat. Anytime you're going on a trip, he's going to check out your car and make sure that it's safe for you and the loved ones in your family. Well, Paul wasn't a customer, he just needed a flat tire fixed. And when the car got fixed, the Les Schwab guy said, no charge. And he said, what? He says, I didn't get the tires. He says, it's okay. As a matter of fact, we checked your car. You got another 20,000 miles on the brakes, but you ought to watch them. And Les Schwab gained another customer who 40 years later is still buying from him, who has told people like me about it and continues to have that kind of loyalty. The North Face is probably one of my favorite stories in the book. Hap Klopp was one of the co-founders. Everybody here knows who the North Face is, or? Okay. The North Face is named not for the one at Yosemite, as I thought it was, but for the Esser precipice in the Swiss Alps. It is considered the toughest slope to climb in the world. It has set the Guinness Book of World Records for people who died trying. So when you make a brand statement that you're representing the North Face, you're saying you can trust your life on the products we're going to sell you to do anything you do outdoors. And they pretty much tried to keep to that. They struggled to get people to believe it at first. Then they changed the name and they made a claim that other companies have made, but it was any product that has their brand on it, there is a lifetime guarantee. Period. There's no fine print. That's what the guarantee was. The original team no longer owns the company, and they've now added some legalese beneath that. But at the time, it was, you're unhappy, doesn't work, give it back, we'll give you a new one. That's pretty good, but when a competitor came in, the concept of lethal generosity started going one step further to a reality. Because the customer had bought, I think it was a sleeping bag from around the corner from a competitor named Sierra Design. Sierra Design also had a guarantee on its products, but this guy was going backpacking in 3 days, and Sierra Design had to send it back to the manufacturer. The North Face was the manufacturer. The showroom was here, and the guys making the stuff was over here. So Hap turned around, handed it to a guy. He stitched it up, handed it back, and the guy says, "My God, you saved my life, you saved my trip. Oh, how much do I owe you?" And Hap said, "Have a nice trip." And he gained another customer for life. Mountain Sun is one of my favorites. This couple arrives late in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They go into a restaurant, and they're starved. Their flight was delayed out of Chicago. They haven't eaten in 14 hours. They sit down, they're reading about all this good food. The food on the other tables look good, and then they see the words cash only. And they haven't picked up their luggage, which was delayed also, and they don't have any credit cards with them. So they start to get up and leave when the waiter comes after them and says, "No, no, 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 what's the problem?" And they explain and says, "Oh, you've had a terrible day. Sit down, the house will buy you a drink, and here's a karma envelope." And they say, "What's a karma envelope?" It says, "We believe that if we give you this envelope, you're going to put what you owe us in it and send it back to us when you have your money." They looked at each other. They had their drinks. They had a wonderful time. They asked the guy what kind of return they got on this good deed, and the answer was, this was a bad month. We only had 85%, but there may be a few stragglers before we give up on them. What do you do if they don't pay? And I said, "It's karma." The last story is where technology began to come in, and it's where I actually coined the term. It was 2009. Most cities were straight for money, which is, I guess, not news. And in Canada, the Toronto Metropolitan System announced they couldn't run the subways and the trains and the buses all night on New Year's Eve. They did it every year for the sake of safety, but this year they had to save money, and there was $80,000. They weren't going to do it. Molson, the leading, it's now Molson Coors, but back then it was Molson, was the leading brewery in Canada, and they stepped up and said, "We think that citizens should do this, small business should do this. We're putting up the first $20,000, and we call upon Labatt," which was the largest competitor, "to match our funds in the interest of public safety." They made this announcement on their blog. Labatt didn't have a blog. Their staff started fanning it out on Twitter. Labatt didn't look at Twitter. Everywhere in the city, people were talking about the Molson Challenge. And Labatt found out about it 5 days ago, 5 days later, when the newspapers picked it up. Then they had the Lethal Generosity Challenge. They could follow a competitor's thought leadership, or they could say no and not be in favor of public safety on New Year's Eve in their hometown. This is a tough choice. They, of course, followed suit, and thus they made their competitor a thought leader. This book is a sequel to a book I wrote 2 years ago with Robert Scoble. It did quite well, actually. Basically, we argued that 5 technology forces, mobile and wearables, social media, sensors, now the IoT, data, of course, and location technologies were converging into a superstorm. and that this was about to change a great deal. The book did very well, and we had a lot of talk, but it was really faith-based marketing. It was arguing things that had not yet happened, and throughout the book we said in the next 3 to 5 years, 2 weeks after our book was completed, applications that we didn't know about started happening. We predicted something like what is now known as beacons to happen. 6 weeks later, Apple announced iBeacons, changing everything. How many people here have an iPhone on them? That's what I thought. You're carrying around beacons with you. They can talk to things in stores, and the number of stores where that's happening is growing rapidly in number. The number is now in the millions. 2 years ago, there was no such thing. But what was wrong with the book is I couldn't give real business stories. So the last book was all about technology, and this new book is about business and what retailers and other public-facing enterprises, such as transportation depots, concert halls, stadiums, convention halls, have been doing with contextual technology just in 2 years. While the last book talked about the convergence of technology, this book talks about the convergence of technology and a generation, the millennials. In 2015, millennials became the largest segment of the global purchasing population. This is going to be true for probably another 50 years because they're not having a lot of babies to replace them as they are replacing us aging boomers. We also look at what's being called the sharing economy. And the sharing economy, I think, isn't as much about sharing as it is about technology that is entirely disruptive. Public-facing companies are becoming software platforms. This becomes strikingly obvious, but when you're a taxi company or a hotel chain and you're competing with software, it is very, very difficult to fight back on an even basis. If you don't have the overhead of bricks, then the whole game changes very dramatically. And this last factor leads to major changes in marketing. It also, I don't want to get ahead of me. I told you about them a little. It also comes into the factor of there is a shift going on in the marketplace to the brand. Excuse me, everybody. What has happened is that brands used to try to develop trust by putting messages out. And now customers trust each other, and they have their conversations which influence people's purchases far more than what brands can do. And in so doing, brands need to join the conversation started by others much more than starting them. I'm a self-publisher, and one of my sponsors this time was Sailthrough, which is a marketing intelligence company. And they did a survey on trust. Excuse me. I get all choked up when I talk about trust. And they really made pretty clear statistically that millennials are behaving differently than non-millennials, while people of my generation remain very freaked out by technology that knows who we are, where we are, what we want, what we're likely to do. Millennials like it. They like the personalization that the technology will help them have the easiest, most friction-free experience they possibly can have in stores. One story that popped out at me, well, when I started this book, I read all these onerous things about a selfish generation, self-absorbed, underproductive, not team players, and then I was meeting millennials and people who worked with millennials and hearing completely different stories. One of my favorites came from Dave Donahue, who is the VP Marketing and Communications at United Software in San Francisco. And his company, like so many other companies, hired a group of millennials, partly to get creative work that appeals to other millennials. And nothing much happened for a while, and the company didn't change much. But one day something did happen. One of the people who reported to him sent him an invite to be friends with him on Facebook. No big thing, but it had never happened before in the company culture. There were friendships that were in work that went into elsewhere, and peers might be friends to each other on Facebook. But somebody who reported to you, asking you to friend them, it turns out there's a very millennial thing according to the Sail Through survey, because millennials say, if you want to trust us, then you got to trust. If you want me to trust you, you have to trust me first. And this was it. So Dave didn't know this, but he said, what the hell, and he friended him. And that changed the entire business over the coming 2 years. It became a flatter organization. A Facebook group was formed where bosses and employees all talked, shared ideas, talked about what was working, wasn't working. Morale was raised. The company has grown hugely. Adweek listed as one of the 40 best places to work in 2014. A very significant percentage of their business is now coming from companies driven by millennials. One of the things that was a process of dot connecting for me starts with the guy in my upper left-hand corner there. His name's Tom Majkowski. Oh, it isn't. It's I forgot his first name, Brian Majkowski. He started Tom's. He started Tom's because he saw a bunch of kids in a village who were suffering because they had no shoes. So he started a shoe company, and he started one-for-one marketing that said, every time you buy a pair of shoes from me from Nordstrom or wherever you choose to buy them, I'll give a pair to a poor kid somewhere else in the world. And this has been wildly popular. I think his one-for-one marketing has now given 45 million pairs of shoes to kids. He's been called a social entrepreneur in many places. He is not. He is for profit. He's making a good profit. He's taken this business model of putting a cause at the center of the company, of hiring people based on a culture that believes in social causes, and he is pushing other shoes off the shelf in fashionable stores. Most of you probably know about them. If you are a millennial, you might notice that young people are now wearing glasses like the ones I started wearing in the 60s when I first wore glasses, but now they're hip and cool. To me, they're Buddy Holly glasses, but it's from a company called Warby Parker. Warby Parker started because one of the four guys that would found it lost his glasses on a hiking trip. I don't know if he was using the North Face equipment. And he was appalled to find out that his insurance didn't cover 2 pairs of glasses in 1 year. And so he spent the rest of the semester squinting and suffering, as he put it. And 3 buddies also wondered why glasses were so damn expensive to replace. And it turned out that there are very few makers of glasses in the world, far fewer than you would believe. In fact, there's a virtual monopoly, and the different styles you buy from different brands are made by the same people, and they're all made for less than 50 bucks. So Warby hired its own millennial designers, its own millennial lens grinders. They started making them themselves, and they started selling them on a pretty cool site where you can go and use augmented reality to see what you would look by clicking on a button, and all of a sudden you'd see in the virtual mirror what you'd look like in those glasses. You pick 5 pair, they send them to you in a case, on trust. You don't pay for them. And you can then spend 5 more days asking your friends and looking in the mirror and trying them on, deciding which pair you want. You indicate, you send back, you get your glasses on the bill 5 days later. It's pretty cool. This same idea was taken completely out of technology, this idea of cause-based marketing, by Ido Leffler, who started a company. He's now started 14 companies, but when I wrote the book, it was a mere 10. His first one was Yes2. Yes2 makes shampoo, conditioner, and other goods. You can find them in such exotic stores as Walmart, Target, Safeway. You can also buy them online. And every time you buy Any one of the products that Ito markets over this more than a dozen companies, a cause is served. Whatever you do, somebody else gets a pair of glasses, as Warby does. They teach organic gardening in places in the Sahara, Africa. And so again, he's built a series of cultures. And these dots connect over here with these last four guys who started something called Summit. Summit doesn't sound like much, but it's a bunch of very rich young people who decided it would be cool to have a conference and somehow or other had enough clout to raise money to keep attracting more and more very well achieved, socially minded young people. They have now been at the White House where they've talked about new entrepreneurship. They've invested in, they've purchased a 71-acre marine park in the Bahamas to preserve the environment there. They've also started investing money in other companies. They've done okay with one of them called Uber, where they had seed money in. There's probably another dozen companies I could name that you've heard of. And now they bought a mountain. Powder Mountain is the largest ski mountain in the United States. And they started to build a village where they'll have an annual conference every year. And at that conference, there are speakers, but everybody talks yes and no. We saw Chelsea Clinton this morning. Last year, Summit had Bill Clinton there, so they do okay on speakers. I talked a little about experience trumping brand, but it's a really critical point. The idea is to give customers the very, very best possible experience. What does that mean? It doesn't mean jugglers and clowns. It means that every point where the customer touches a brand, the experience goes smoothly. What the customer wants to have happen, happens. This idea is that if a company acts trustworthy, not pretends to, not does ads saying how trustworthy they are, but just behaves in a way that shows the respect that customers deserve, they will get trust back. Ads still work. It's a lot of people, particularly at this conference, will say ads are done. Well, they're not done, but they're changing. Millennials particularly love a deal. Everybody loves a deal, so they're not that different. But when millennials love a deal and they see an offer, that begins a sequence. And that sequence then goes to Googling it, going to social media, asking friends about it, going into a store where something may be sold, holding it up and asking people whether this is a good product, whether they look good in this product or whatever. Contextual technology was radical and disruptive just 2 years ago and is rapidly becoming mainstream in modern companies that intersect with end users. I don't think in history change has ever happened more rapidly, but I predict that it will continue to happen more and more rapidly. Large businesses in particular tend to make changes very, very slowly. Social media got into large corporations with little skunk works, the members of which very often left the large organization as social media got absorbed into the mainstream of the company structure. Now is a huge opportunity for smaller companies competing with bigger companies to take advantage of social technologies in order to get a head start. Everything you do that is innovative, big companies will do that too. But the fact that you do it first is all the difference in the world. The fact that you offer a better experience is all the difference in the world. The fact that your customers will tell their friends that this is cool, and they're not doing it for you, they're doing it for their friends, is very, very important. The sharing economy is a permanent phenomenon. I don't know what it will be called. But the power of sharing and the power of software is the most disruptive thing I've seen in my 35 years of tracking what's going on in technology and business. One of the mainstream companies that I'm most impressed with is Nordstrom. Very quickly on the left is they were the first mainstream realtor to use Toms. What's interesting is they've moved, in most stores, 9 West and other very trendy, heavy advertising brands out of the way and given the prime real estate to Toms. They haven't done that for social causes. They've done it because there's more money in it. Through Etsy, they have linked, there's about 3 steps to it, but in the center circle, you're seeing a bunch of tribeswomen from, I believe it's northern Tanzania. They make beaded baskets and things just as their grandparents made it's been going on for generations. The difference is now through the use of social technology and sharing technology, their goods are being sold in Nordstrom shelves. They're reasonably priced, and what Nordstrom is doing is they compete with other high-end stores, and now they have something that's different, something that has a cause, something that is appealing to people who care about companies being generous and concerned about the environment, which brings me to the third guy. G-Star Raw is a very popular, trendy brand. I think most of their customers are buying it because it's popular and trendy. But the stuff this guy's wearing as he leaps over whatever it is he's leaping over there is made from garbage collected from the ocean and turned into fabrics. Seaweed is used to make the thread, and everything he's wearing is 100% biodegradable. I want to give you 3 examples of what's going on in retail, and the biggest trend is location technologies is overwhelmingly changing things. Years ago, people used the phone when they were in a shopping line waiting to check out, and they were bored and they're talking to friends or they were doing their email. Now that phone is part of the shopping experience. On the left you see aisle 411. They have made a partnership with Esri, one of the world's largest satellite technology companies. Loyal customers in 13,000 North American stores such as Home Depot and other superstores, Target, Walmart. I'm sorry, that's Walgreens, not Walmart. When a loyal customer gets out of the car in the parking lot, a satellite flying overhead reports it to the store. The store now knows that there's a customer there. The data record shows this customer was building a deck. When the customer walks in through the door, he opens up the 411 interior map and sees the easiest route to get to where he wants to go. While he's going to the lumber department, he may get text suggestions on getting bench material or other material you make to build to build a deck, and can say yes. It can be prepared for him as he goes along. The guy in the middle is maybe my favorite. The logo for maybe my favorite company in the book. It's called Topingo. Topingo is just on college campuses, or was until very, very recently. The little logo shows what's going on. Students are always in a hurry, and they started by just being the place where you could order your bagels and coffee in the 10 minutes breaks online at urban campuses. They're now serving over 1 million students. Food services, the largest food servers, just closed a deal this week, so it didn't get into my book. And what they're using is location technologies plus an understanding of the patterns of the customer. They know that most students buy the same snack between classes every day in the same place. And so 10 minutes before class ends, they push a button. They get a little text message that says, do you want your usual? Yep. You want your usual? No. Well, here's a list of things you can buy. They go in there, they take it, and like when you leave an Uber, when they just leave without paying because it's all done automatically using automatic technology. Musketeer is the only non-consumer business that I'm talking about. The idea for it started when 3 Israeli students were kidnapped and dragged through tunnels and killed a few years ago, leading to a very ugly war between Gaza and Israel. Musketeer allows people in trouble to tell other members of the Musketeer community who are nearby that they're in trouble. And this might have saved their lives. What happened in this case was that one of the kids kidnapped actually called the police before his phone was taken away from him. And the policeman sat on it because it wasn't their department, that was an Israeli defense group's department. And by the time the alert got to the right channel, it was too late for anything. Macy's is using a partnership with Shopkick to give rewards to customers who just come check something out. They don't have to buy anything, they just automatically get a reward because Shopkick sees they're in front of the goods that are being promoted. Museums are using location technologies, particularly beacons, so that they can augment the experience that visitors to the museum have. You stand in a place, a beacon sees you there, you pick up the phone and you learn a little of the history of the whatever the animal is in front of them. They do it throughout the museum. They also are studying visitor traffic patterns so that they know what exhibits will have the people staying the longest, which ones need better lighting, so they're constantly tweaking what they have. I don't know how you really move a brontosaurus. Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas is in a partnership to use beacons and other location technologies for every vendor and every terminal. You'll get automatic flashes, which many of us get when your plane is leaving, but now it'll say, we see that you like Starbucks. Do you want to have a Starbucks waiting for you as you go past this on your way to your gate? Dallas-Fort Worth is actually a pilot program for every international airport on Earth. To the left here is Colingo, which is Coachella, which is a rock concert attended by 800,000 people in the California desert. They have weird stuff like that robotic, inflatable astronaut wandering about them, along with caterpillars and butterflies. What they have done there that was most interesting this year is they linked the beacons that they use so that it tells you more than just who's playing where and where the bathrooms are and where the lines are. It also lets you order Uber or any other services by linking the beacon systems to other platforms. In the middle there is the makings. This is actually a drone photo of what is going to become the Sacramento Kings' new stadium. It's a showcase for all stadiums. It is going to use a new technology called LTE-D. Apple, I believe, called it a different name, but it's LTE-D technology. The D stands for direct. It eliminates things going through the cloud and allows peer-to-peer communications. So if I'm in Times Square and I have 5 friends and I want seafood, or we want seafood, we can just put it onto the platform and seafood peddlers nearby can compete for us, offer us special deals based on what our intentions are, rather than waiting till we go by and telling us what we should want. Companies that will make the applications working that have stated it publicly include Facebook, Google, and Yahoo. So I don't think it'll be a small time at all, and I think it'll be very soon, and it will dramatically change how location technologies are working. Telstra, which is another sponsor of my book, is the largest phone company in Australia. What's remarkable about them is that they are using old technologies like NFS, People pick up two phones that they can't decide which one to buy. They put them on smart glass in front of them, and they see the features, they see third-party reviews that the store has nothing to do with. And then if they are puzzled and they want to look at it closer, they take a little NFS card home with them, and they can study it at their leisure. Then they can order online rather than go back to the store. They also create a history, so the siloing between online and stores goes away. When the customer comes into the store, what they researched the night before online, if they opted in, will be available to the person who greets them as they enter. The contactless economy is something you just started hearing about with the new wallets and the Apple Pay and stuff coming out. Essentially, we're going into a new world where the greatest bottleneck in transactions is going to become transparent and easy. Braintree is one of several. Braintree powers Uber. That probably says everything you need. They have a competitor called Slide that powers Apple Pay. So we have two companies competing to make it easier to pay and get out of the store or the cab or whatever as easily as possible. The same technology is going to be used for keyless entries into hotel rooms and automatic check-ins when you walk through the door of a hotel. If you were at the Westin last night, you would understand the advantages to that part. Facebook is a company that they bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, and everybody in the West said they're crazy, and Zuckerberg said, I don't care what you think, I'm after another billion customers, and I already have my billion here. So he's looking at India and sub-Saharan Africa, and their WhatsApp is the mainstream. I suspect he also suspects that advertising isn't going to be as good for revenue in the near future as it is today. So he's getting into all sort of things to bring in the rest of the world. Alibaba is over in China. They're doing the same thing. They've come to America, and if you want to buy Chinese products, there's nothing like it to you. You can't beat it because they're partnering with everyone over there because the government has made two prices, one from Alibaba and one for Westerners. Bitcoin is a virtual currency that you've heard of. You might not take it seriously, but if you look at the lists of companies that are joining it and the numbers going up, they love it. It's not just for money launderers anymore. It is a secure online economy that it works with, I don't want to go too deeply into it, but it's never been hacked. There's nothing to hack because it's all virtual. And so far, it remains impossible to do it, and more companies are beginning to accept it. There's rumors that certain Democratic candidates for president are going to accept Bitcoin donations, which I think opens up a whole new dynamic. So I am probably close to running out of time because I haven't done these slides before, but to me, marketing is really at a crossroads. And the crossroads isn't whether you're going to use contextual technology or not, because you are. If you're not already using it, you will be. Everybody will be using it, just like everybody has taken blogs and done things that those of us who were present at the creation of the dynamic might not like. Location technologies can be very, very obnoxious. You can walk through a mall and get shouted at, and if you're not allowed the freedom to filter out these messages, you're going to be turned off to the mall, to the brands, to the products, to the merchants, and everything. The real decision is whether you're going to remain of the headset that your job is to build demand, to tell customers what they want, as opposed to let customers tell you what they want. The new PR, everybody is using this term, data-driven PR, and because I'm running low on time, I'll try to summarize that. If you look at a world where each of us is now a publisher, every company is a media company, PR is supposed to reach influencers when everyone is an influencer. And you can't do that anymore, and you can't just publish out to them, but you can collect data that is voluntarily given all the time. Marketers tell me how much they love Facebook because on their Facebook page they have 89,212 likes. And I always say, well, that's great. Who are those people? How many of them bought from you? How many are they going to buy? And they say, well, no, we have 89,000. Well, that's because they like to be measured, and that sounds very good. The likes that matter is when I tell Robert Scoble that I like a movie, and I do that. The likes that matter is when I say, I'm going to Napa this weekend, and I'm trying to find a new Cabernet that I like. And I don't say that to a merchant, but they have the right to listen. This happens 2.7 billion times a day. People, of their own free will, talk about what their intentions are, what they prefer, what they like. And very few marketers are listening. I think this will change a great deal. The real challenge in a world where you know everything about everyone is to be able to deliver it in a way that's personal, in a way that will allow you to understand who each person on earth is when they are interested in something that you really have to offer them. And they'll tell you. Two of my favorites are Paul Mabray, the Les Schwab tire guy, who started a little company in Napa that basically, he culled what people said about wine and when they were traveling to US wine countries. And he basically had a small group of wineries. And he said, hey, Joe Smith is coming up. They're staying in Rutherford. They're driving to Opus One, and they're going by your winery. You compete with Opus One. So when Joe Smith is near you, they'll get into your geofence, and we'll signal you, and you can send a little text message saying, hey, Joe, our master sommelier invites you to our wine library for a very special treat. You can literally hijack customers by being kind to them, too. It's their will. Recently, W2O Group bought Vintank, and their intention is to take that type of technology and use it globally. Companies like Starbucks, you can just go through the list, and basically it will be using location technology to cull what people say they like and understand what their intention is to do next. I talk to a lot of people about advertising and traditional marketing practices, and all of them told me how great it's doing next to broadcast marketing, TV advertising. Of course it is. The average TV viewer is probably about 114 right now. Anyone younger is using some device to cull out the advertising. But when they talk only about digital, what RGA is calling traditional digital advertising, they see a tapering going on. And it's a tapering that's been going slowly for a very long time. The president, the founder of RGA, who has gotten quite prosperous making very creative 30-second spots, has predicted they will soon die. What is coming in place is a whole new way of advertising. To summarize it, ads are getting into context. They're turning from pushing things to telling stories. And they're also turning to niche communities. They're creating communities that they host. Nike has a community of athletic shoe lovers. They also have one for women who compete athletically or just like to run recreationally. The list goes on and on and on. House is one that is really a community for people interested in buying things for the house. And more of these are going into formats, community formats, where people can find people like them to talk about stuff they both care about. This has a lot to do with the future. On the left is an RGA ad. It has won all sorts of awards for Beat headphones, but it's 5 minutes long. It's not a 30-minute spot, and it tells a dramatic story that culminates in World Cup soccer. Beats is never mentioned. You see it as you do in the freeze frame that I've taken here. But the idea is that the story will last longer and that people will know that it was from Beats. It also doesn't have to be on television at all. This was posted on YouTube, and after 30 days, it had 29,000 views. These are people who voluntarily went to see a paid ad on YouTube 29 million times. That's not bad. Perhaps my favorite in the whole world is the challenge of trust. You're seeing one of, I think, 20 ads from Thai Insurance. Each one of them show a story of people living everyday lives where tragedy happens. And it isn't about the insurance company helping, it's about people helping each other. They're surprisingly touching. This is one of my favorites. Again, this is a little old tech. This is a guy that's advertising a place to come and visit in the Swiss Alps. This is in the Zurich train station. And as people walk by, he sees them and starts talking to them. He says, "Nice bag," or, "Oh, you're a skateboarder, I see." And it turns out this is really a Skype connection. And so people are standing there shocked that this guy sees what they're doing. One guy yodels at him, and he yodels back. And this is a new way of engaging that really is truly interactive in a way that the term hasn't been used previously. This is something I love. This is a Swedish train station, and selling a very popular shampoo. The context is that when that train goes by, this model on the billboard, her hair blows as the train goes by. That was very interesting, and it got a whole lot of people talking. So a children's cancer foundation put up very similar billboards in the same stations. And when the train blew by, it blew off the hairpiece entirely and caused a shock value that has tripled the donations to the Children's Cancer Foundation. So the whole book aims at a single point, a single walking away point, that marketing in the future will be pinpoint, and I said it a little bit earlier. You will be able to know everything you need to know about your customer if you treat what you know in a trustworthy way, if you do it in a way that they will say, "This is a cool experience." If you do that, they will tell their friends, and there is no better way to gain customers, keep them, and screw your competition than that. It's my story. Thank you very much. I have one more thing, if I'm allowed to. I have one more thing to say. This isn't a microphone. I was supposed to have the book ready today. It was 2 weeks late. I put the book to bed last night, and then I did the same for myself. Down in the bookstore, there are copies of Age of Context, which is the first of the two books. It's on sale for $15. When my book comes out, it'll be $25, but if you give me your business card after this out in the hallway, because I think somebody else needs the room, or you see me downstairs, I will sell you the new book for $15 as well. Thank you very much.